Welcome back to Bargirl Baddies. Today's story is about Derek, a 29-year-old software developer from Vancouver, Canada, who thought he'd found his soulmate in the neon-lit chaos of Pattaya. This is a story about a whirlwind romance that felt like destiny, a wedding that seemed to promise everything he'd been missing, and a reality that would shatter everything Derek thought he knew about love, trust, and himself. If you've ever fallen hard for someone, only to realize you were seeing what you wanted to see instead of what was really there, this one's going to hit close to home. Drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. And if you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted completely, hit that like button and subscribe. You're not alone. Now, here's Derek's story, in his own words. I'll be honest with you, before Thailand, I was barely living. I was alive, going through the motions, but I wasn't really there. I was 29 years old, grinding 70-hour weeks at a tech startup in Vancouver, living in a shoebox condo that cost me $2,000 a month, staring out at rain-soaked streets and wondering if this was all there was. My days blurred together. Wake up, chug coffee, code until my eyes burned, order, skip the dishes, fall asleep watching Netflix, repeat. I hadn't had a real conversation with anyone outside of Slack messages in months. My longest relationship had ended 2 years before, when my ex told me I was married to my work. She wasn't wrong. I just didn't know what else to do. Vancouver's a beautiful city, don't get me wrong. Mountains, ocean, all that. But it's expensive and lonely if you're not plugged into the right social circles. My friends from university had all paired off, bought condos, started talking about mortgages and kids. I was still splitting pizza buckets for dinner and wondering why every woman on Hinge seemed to have the same bio. I felt stuck. Not depressed exactly, just numb. Like I was watching my life happen to someone else. Then one day, my work buddy, this guy named Josh, who'd spent a year teaching English in Southeast Asia, showed me some YouTube videos. Expats living in Thailand, guys my age, younger even, talking about how they traded the rat race for beach sunsets and cheap beer and a slower pace of life. The videos showed these beautiful beaches, night markets glowing with lanterns, smiling locals, apartments you could rent for $300 a month. It looked like a different planet. Josh laughed and said half those guys were full of it, but even he admitted Thailand had changed his life, got him out of his head, taught him what mattered. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I started watching more videos, reading forums, stalking Reddit threads about Chiang Mai and Phuket, and this place called Pattaya. Pattaya had a reputation, I knew that. Party town, bar scene. But it also looked vibrant and alive in a way Vancouver had never felt to me. I told myself I'd just go for 2 weeks. A vacation, clear my head. Maybe it'd give me perspective, help me figure out what I actually wanted. I booked the flight on a Tuesday night after a particularly brutal sprint at work. 2 weeks in Pattaya. I didn't tell anyone except Josh. My mum would have freaked out. My ex would have laughed. I just wanted to disappear for a bit and see what it felt like to be somewhere completely different. The flight was long, 15 hours with a layover in Tokyo. But when I stepped off the plane in Bangkok and felt that wall of humid air hit me, something in my chest loosened. It smelled like jasmine and gasoline and street food. I took a bus down to Pattaya, about 2 hours south, and checked into a mid-range hotel on Swa Buahau, nothing fancy. Clean bed, decent Wi-Fi, aircon that rattled but worked. I dropped my bag, showered off the flight, and stood on the balcony looking out at the city. It was dusk. The sky was turning purple and orange, and below me the street was already alive with motorbikes weaving through traffic, vendors grilling skewers of pork, tuk-tuks honking, music thumping from a dozen different bars. I felt my heart beating faster. Not from anxiety. From something else. Anticipation, maybe. Possibility. I wandered out that first night without a plan, just followed the noise. Soi Buakau was packed with tourists and expats. Every other storefront, a bar or a massage parlor or a 7-Eleven. I grabbed a beer from a family mart and kept walking, letting the chaos wash over me. It was overwhelming, but in a good way. In Vancouver, I felt invisible. Here, I felt like I was part of something, even if I didn't understand it yet. On my second night, I ended up at a small bar off Second Road. It wasn't one of the big, flashy places on Walking Street, just a quiet, open-air spot with a few tables, some string lights, a sound system playing old R&B. There were maybe a dozen girls working there, sitting at the bar or chatting with customers. I sat down, ordered a singer, and tried not to look too much like a nervous tourist. That's when she came over. Her name was Nok. She was 24, with shoulder-length black hair, a warm smile, and careful English that sounded like she practiced it a lot. She wasn't pushy, like some of the other girls I'd seen. She didn't immediately ask me to buy her a drink or where I was from. She just sat down, smiled, and said, "I look tired." I laughed and said I was. She asked if it was my first time in Pattaya. I said yeah. She nodded, like she understood, and asked if I liked it so far. I said I didn't know yet. We talked for hours. She asked about Canada, about my work, about why I'd come to Thailand. I told her the truth, that I was burnt out, that I needed to get away from my life for a bit. She listened in a way people back home didn't. She didn't try to fix it or offer advice. She just nodded and said, "Sometimes you have to leave to see clearly." I asked about her. She said she was from Isan, a province up north. She'd come to Pattaya to work, to send money back to her family. Her mom was sick. Her younger brother was still in school. She said she wanted to open a coffee shop someday, something small and quiet. She laughed and said, maybe it was a silly dream. I told her it wasn't silly at all, I meant it. There was something about her that felt real. She wasn't performing. She wasn't playing a role, or maybe she was, and I just wanted so badly to believe she wasn't. Either way, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. A connection. A spark. When the bar closed around 2 in the morning, she gave me her line ID and said if I wanted to hang out again, I should message her. No pressure. Just a smile. I walked back to my hotel feeling like I was floating. We met up the next day. She took me to a morning market where vendors sold fresh mangoes and fried dough and grilled chicken on sticks. She knew half the people there, greeted them in rapid Thai, laughed and joked. She bought me a bag of rambutan and showed me how to peel them. We ate sitting on plastic stools, watching motorbikes zip past, and she told me stories about growing up in her village, how she used to catch frogs in the rice paddies, how her grandmother made the best somtam in the province, how she missed home but couldn't go back because there was no work, no future. I told her about Vancouver, about the rain and the mountains, and how beautiful it was and how lonely I'd been. She listened and didn't judge. She just said sometimes the most beautiful places are the hardest to live in. I thought about that for a long time. Over the next week, we were inseparable. She showed me the Pattaya tourists don't see. A hidden temple on a hill where monks blessed amulets and the view stretched out over the whole city. A beachside restaurant in Jomtien where we ate grilled fish and fried rice and watched the sunset turn the ocean gold. A tiny karaoke bar where she sang Thai pop songs, and I butchered an attempt at Wonderwall. She laughed until she cried. I hadn't felt that light in years. She never asked me for money. Not once. I offered a few times, casually, saying I wanted to help or pay for dinner, and she'd wave me off or insist on splitting it. She'd buy me coffee in the morning, little iced lattes from a cart near her apartment. She'd hold my hand walking down the street without hesitation, without checking to see who was watching. It felt easy, natural, real. On my last night, we went to Jomtien Beach. It was quieter than Pattaya Beach, less touristy. We sat in the sand with a bottle of sang som and 2 plastic cups, watching the waves roll in under the moonlight. The air was warm and thick and smelled like salt and grilled seafood from a nearby vendor. I told her I didn't want to leave, that the past 2 weeks had been the best I'd felt in years, that I didn't know how to go back to my old life knowing this existed. She rested her head on my shoulder and said she didn't want me to go either. She said it quietly, like she was afraid to say it out loud. I kissed her forehead, and we sat there in silence, listening to the ocean. I felt something shift inside me. A decision I hadn't made yet, but could feel forming. I flew back to Vancouver 3 days later. The moment I stepped off the plane and felt the cold drizzle on my face, I knew I'd made a mistake, leaving. My condo felt even smaller than before. Work felt meaningless. I'd sit in meetings about app optimization and user retention, and think about Nok laughing at my terrible Thai, about the way she'd held my hand on the back of a motorbike, about the warmth in her eyes when she looked at me. We messaged every day. Good morning texts, photos of her coffee, of stray dogs she fed near her apartment, of the rain in Pattaya. She sent me videos of the beach, of the market, of her cooking pad krapao in her tiny kitchen. I sent her photos of the Vancouver skyline, of my desk set up, of the snow when it finally came. We video called at odd hours, her morning and my night, her night and my afternoon. She'd be getting ready for bed, and I'd be eating breakfast. The time difference made everything feel surreal, like we were living in two different worlds. I started sending her money, not a lot at first, just a bit to help with rent. Then her grandmother got sick and needed medicine. Then her motorbike broke down. Then her brother's school fees were due. I sent it all without hesitation. I told myself I was helping someone I cared about. That this was what you did when you loved someone. She was always grateful, always said she'd pay me back, always said I didn't have to. But I wanted to. It made me feel useful, needed, like I mattered to someone. 3 months after I got back, I couldn't take it anymore. I was miserable. I'd wake up and the first thing I'd do was check my phone to see if she'd messaged. I'd go through my day on autopilot, counting the hours until we could talk again. My work suffered. My boss pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay. I lied and said I was fine. But I wasn't. I was in love with someone 8,000 miles away, and every day I stayed in Vancouver felt like a waste. So I quit. Just like that. Gave my 2 weeks, subletted my condo, sold most of my stuff. My mum cried on the phone and asked what I was doing with my life. My friends thought I'd lost my mind. Josh was the only one who got it. He said if I didn't go, I'd regret it forever. He also said to be careful, to keep my eyes open, to remember that paradise has a price. I didn't know what he meant at the time. I thought he was just being cynical. I booked a one-way ticket back to Thailand. When I told Nok, she sent me a voice message. She was crying, happy crying, saying she couldn't believe it, saying she'd miss me so much, saying everything was going to be perfect. I listened to that message 100 times on the flight over. I believed every word. Moving in with Nok felt like stepping into the life I was always supposed to have. She'd found us a small apartment in a quiet soy off Thepprasit Road, away from the tourist chaos. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a balcony overlooking a street where vendors sold fruit and somtam from carts every morning. The rent was 6,000 baht a month, about 200 Canadian dollars. Back home, that wouldn't cover a parking spot. Here, it was our whole life. The first few months were everything I dreamed about during those lonely nights in Vancouver. We'd wake up to sunlight streaming through thin curtains, the sound of motorbikes and street vendors calling out their goods. Nok would make coffee, thick and sweet the way Thais like it, and we'd sit on the balcony watching the neighborhood come alive. Then we'd rent a scooter and ride down to Jomtien Beach, park under the palm trees, swim in the warm ocean until our skin pruned. We'd eat at the same beachside restaurant every time, grilled prawns and fried rice, splitting a large chang between us. The owner started recognizing us, would smile and wave when we pulled up. Evenings we'd cook together in our cramped kitchen. Nok taught me how to make pad krapao, how much fish sauce to add, how to get the holy basil crispy. I taught her how to make spaghetti carbonara, though she thought the cream and cheese combination was strange. We'd laugh at my attempts to speak Thai, at her attempts to pronounce Saskatchewan. We'd fall asleep with the fan oscillating overhead, her head on my chest, and I'd think this is it. This is what happiness actually feels like. Nok stopped working at the bar when I moved in. I told her she didn't have to, that I didn't want to be that controlling foreign boyfriend, but she said she wanted to. She said now that I was here, she could finally do something different. Maybe take an English course, maybe start planning for that coffee shop she'd always talked about. I was supporting us both on my savings and some freelance web development work I picked up online. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Life was cheap here. We didn't need much. My friends back home thought I was insane. My mom called every week asking when I was coming back, if I was being careful, if I was sure about this girl. I'd tell her everything was fine, better than fine, and I'd hear the worry in her voice, but I'd ignore it. What did they know? They were stuck in their routines, their mortgages, their cold, rainy cities. I was living. Actually living. I had someone who cared about me, who smiled when I walked through the door, who made me feel like I mattered. 6 months in, I proposed. I'd been thinking about it for weeks, maybe longer. I knew it was fast by Western standards, but time felt different here. We'd been through more in 6 months than some couples go through in years. The long distance, the leap of faith, building a life together from nothing. I wanted to make it official. I wanted her to know I was serious, that this wasn't some extended vacation fling, that I saw a future with her. I took her to Koh Hu Lan, the island you can see from Pattaya Beach. We caught the ferry in the morning, spent the day swimming at Tahuan Beach, eating grilled corn from a beach vendor. As the sun started to set, I led her to a quiet spot away from the crowds. My hands were shaking. I didn't have a fancy ring, just a simple silver band I'd bought at a shop in Central Festival. I got down on one knee in the sand and asked her to marry me. She cried. Like really cried. Her hands covered her mouth and tears streamed down her face, and she kept saying yes, yes, yes. People around us clapped. An old Thai couple smiled and gave us a thumbs up. I slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her and felt like the luckiest man alive. On the ferry ride back, she kept looking at the ring, turning her hand in the light, showing it to strangers who congratulated us. I held her close and watched Pattaya's lights grow brighter as we approached the shore. We planned a small wedding. Nok wanted to do it properly, with a Buddhist ceremony at a temple in her village up country. I'd never been to Isan, had only seen photos she'd shown me on her phone. We took a bus up there, about 8 hours north through flat rice fields and small towns that looked frozen in time. Her village was tiny, maybe a few hundred people, houses on stilts, dirt roads, chickens wandering freely. Her family lived in a modest wooden house with a tin roof. Her mother was a small, weathered woman who smiled with her whole face. Her father was quiet, but kind, shook my hand firmly, offered me rice whiskey that burned going down. They welcomed me like I was already family. Her mother cooked for days preparing for the wedding. Massive pots of sticky rice. Some tam, grilled chicken, curries. Neighbours came by to help, to meet the Farang who was marrying Nok. Kids stared at me and giggled. Old women pinched my cheeks and said something in Thai that made everyone laugh. Nok translated, said they were saying I was handsome, that she'd done well. I felt embarrassed, but happy. This was real. This was family. The ceremony was beautiful. We dressed in traditional Thai wedding clothes, gold and silk. Monks chanted blessings while we sat cross-legged on the floor. Her relatives tied white string around our wrists, sacred threads meant to bind our spirits together. I didn't understand most of what was happening, but I felt the weight of it, the significance. Afterward, there was a party that lasted until dawn. Music blaring from a sound system, people dancing, endless food, and Lao Khao whiskey. Her father pulled me aside, drunk and emotional, and through Nok's translation told me to take care of his daughter, that she was a good girl, that family was everything. I promised I would. I meant it with everything I had. I'd wired money for the sinsod, the dowry. Nok said it was tradition, that her parents expected it, that it showed respect and my commitment. I sent 300,000 baht, about 12,000 Canadian dollars. It hurt my savings, but Nok said most of it was just for show, that her parents would give a lot of it back after the ceremony. They didn't give it back. When I asked Nok about it later, she said her parents needed it for debts, for repairs to the house, for her brother's education. I didn't push. It felt petty to ask for it back. This was her family, our family now. We went back to Pattaya as husband and wife. I thought everything would stay the same, just with rings on our fingers and a legal paper saying we belonged to each other. But things started shifting in ways I didn't notice at first. Small things. Nok spent more time on her phone, always messaging, always scrolling. When I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd say, friends, old co-workers, her family. I didn't think much of it. She was allowed to have her own life. She started going out more. Girls' nights, she called them. She'd get dressed up, makeup perfect, and head out to meet friends at some bar or club. She'd come home late, sometimes at 2 or 3 in the morning, smelling like cigarettes and whiskey. I'd be half asleep and she'd slip into bed and kiss my shoulder and say sorry for waking me. I told myself this was normal. She was young. She'd been cooped up with me for months. She deserved to have fun, to see her friends. I wasn't going to be that jealous, possessive husband, but the late nights became more frequent. 2 or 3 times a week, then almost every night. I started spending my evenings alone, drinking at expat bars near Beach Road, making friends with other foreign guys who'd married Thai women. Their stories made me uneasy. Guys who'd been cleaned out, cheated on, left with nothing. They'd laugh bitterly and say, "Welcome to paradise, brother. Hope you kept your receipts." I'd laugh along, but my stomach would twist. That wasn't not she loved me. We were married. We'd made vows in front of monks and her family. I started drinking more. It was easy to do in Pattaya. Every corner had a bar. Every bar had cheap beer and cheaper whiskey. I'd sit nursing Sinkas and watching football matches I didn't care about, talking to other expats about nothing. Some nights Nock would join me when she wasn't out with her friends. We'd sit together, but it felt different. She'd be on her phone, distracted, barely responding when I tried to talk to her. The easy warmth we'd had was fading, replaced by something hollow. The money requests started increasing. Her mother needed surgery. Her brother crashed his motorbike and needed a new one. Her cousin's baby was sick and needed hospital care. Her niece needed money for school uniforms. Every week there was something. I send the money every time because what else could I do? Say no? Tell her family to figure it out themselves? These were emergencies, real problems, and I had money in my savings. Not as much as before, but enough. I could help, I should help, that's what family does. But Nock was different with me. Less affectionate, more irritable. If I asked where she'd been or who she was messaging, she'd snap at me. Accuse me of not trusting her. Asked me why I was being jealous and controlling. I'd back down immediately, apologize, say I was just worried about her. She'd soften a little, kiss my cheek, say she was sorry too, that she was just stressed about her family. Then she'd go back to her phone. I told myself it was a rough patch. Every relationship has them. We just needed to reconnect, spend more time together. But whenever I suggested doing something, going to the beach, taking a trip to Bangkok, even just cooking dinner together, she'd have an excuse. She was tired. She'd already made plans. She wasn't feeling well. I started to feel like a roommate in my own relationship, like we were living parallel lives that barely intersected. One afternoon, my laptop died, just completely bricked in the middle of a freelance project. I panicked because I needed to send files to a client and I didn't have time to get it fixed. Nock was in the shower, so I grabbed her phone to check my email. I knew her passcode. We'd always been open about that stuff. Or at least I thought we had. The phone unlocked, and immediately a line notification popped up. A message from a contact saved as just a first name, Marcus. The preview said, "Miss you too, baby. Can't wait to see you next week." My stomach dropped. I stood there staring at the screen, my hands shaking. I knew I should stop. Put the phone down, respect her privacy. But I couldn't. I opened the chat. It was all there. Months of messages. Intimate, affectionate, the same kind of thing she used to send me. He was calling her baby, telling her he loved her, asking when she could visit him in Bangkok. She was responding with heart emojis, saying she missed him, that she'd try to come soon. There were photos. Her in outfits I recognized, poses I'd seen her take. Recent photos. From the last few weeks. I scrolled back further, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. There were more names. More chats. Another European guy named Stefan, who was sending her money every month, who she was planning to visit in Phuket. A British guy named Rob, who she'd apparently met before me, who she was still in contact with, still making promises to. The messages were full of, "I love yous" and "I miss yous." And "can you help me with this or that?" She was telling all of them the same stories. The sick mother, the brother's motorbike, the niece's school fees, all of it, to all of them. I felt like the floor had opened up beneath me, like everything I thought was real had just been revealed as theatre. The shower turned off. I heard Nock humming in the bathroom. I stood there holding her phone, my whole body numb, trying to process what I'd just seen. She came out wrapped in a towel, saw me holding her phone, and her face went white. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she lunged for the phone. I pulled it back. She started yelling, asking what the hell I was doing. How dare I go through her private messages? I had no right. I just stared at her. Asked her who Marcus was, who Stefan was, who Rob was. She went quiet. Then she started crying, said it wasn't what it looked like, that they were just friends, that I was misunderstanding. I showed her the messages, read them out loud, the "I love yous," the plans to visit, the request for money. She crumbled, sat on the edge of the bed sobbing, saying I didn't understand, that she needed the money, that her family was depending on her, that she never meant to hurt me. I asked her if any of it was real, if she ever actually loved me, or if I was just another ATM. She looked up at me, with mascara running down her face, and said, "Of course she loved me. I was her husband. How could I even ask that?" But she didn't sound convincing. She sounded desperate. Caught. I asked how many. How many men? She wouldn't answer. Just kept crying, saying she was sorry, that it was all so complicated, that I didn't understand how hard her life was, how much pressure she was under. I asked again. How many? She finally whispered 3. 3 current ones. Not including me. There had been others before. She said it like it was something I should understand, like it was just business. Just survival. I felt something break inside me. Not anger, not even sadness, just this overwhelming numbness. I'd given up everything for this. My job, my home, my savings, my family's respect. I'd married this woman in front of monks and her whole village. I'd sent money to her family, supported her, trusted her completely. And the whole time, I was just one name in a list of foreign men she was stringing along. She reached for me, tried to take my hand, said we could work through this, that she'd stop talking to them, that she'd change. I pulled away, told her I needed space, needed to think. I grabbed my wallet and my passport and walked out. Didn't even know where I was going. Just walked. I ended up at a bar on Beach Road, one of those open-air places full of drunk expats and working girls and loud music. I ordered a whiskey and sat there staring at nothing. The bartender, an older Thai woman, asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. Just poured me another drink and left me alone. I stayed there until closing. Spent the night in a cheap hotel near Walking Street. The room smelled like mould and the aircon barely worked, but I didn't care. I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every moment, every conversation, every time I'd ignored a red flag because I wanted so badly for it to be real. The next morning, I went back to the apartment when I knew Nock would be out, packed my stuff. Not that I had much. Some clothes, my broken laptop, a few books. I left the furniture, the kitchen stuff, everything we bought together. I found a cheap studio apartment near Jomtien Beach, a bare concrete box with a mattress on the floor and a view of a 7-Eleven. I moved in that afternoon. Nock called me dozens of times, sent long messages begging me to come back, to talk, to let her explain. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Every time I saw her name on my screen, I felt sick. Eventually, the messages stopped. A week later, her profile picture changed to her with a new guy, some older European man with his arm around her. I blocked her number. My savings were almost gone. The wedding, the sin sod, the monthly payments to her family, the money I'd sent for emergencies that probably weren't real. I had maybe 30,000 baht left, enough for a few months if I was careful. Going back to Canada felt impossible. I was too ashamed to face my family, my friends, everyone who'd warned me this was a bad idea. Besides, what would I go back to? I'd burned those bridges, quit my job, sublet my place. I'd have to start from zero. So I stayed. Found work teaching English at a language school in Pattaya, one of those places that hired anyone with a pulse and a white face. The pay was garbage, 15,000 baht a month, but it covered rent and food. I taught spoiled rich kids basic conversation, went through the motions, came home to my empty studio, and tried not to think too much. Slowly, things got a little better. I made some friends, real ones, other teachers, a mix of Thais and expats who weren't running from anything, who just ended up here through normal life circumstances. I met a local guy named Somchai who ran a small motorcycle repair shop. He didn't speak much English, and I didn't speak much Thai. But we'd drink beer together after work and laugh at our mutual incomprehension. He never asked me for money, never wanted anything except company. I started seeing Pattaya differently, not as paradise, not as a trap, just as a place. A messy, complicated place full of people trying to survive and find happiness however they could. Some people were genuine, some were hustling, most were somewhere in between. Nock wasn't a villain. She wasn't evil. She was just doing what she thought she had to do to take care of her family, to get by in a system that didn't give her many options. It didn't make what happened hurt any less, but it made it make sense. I realised I'd come to Thailand running from loneliness, not toward love. I'd been so desperate for connection, for meaning, that I'd ignored every warning sign. I'd seen what I wanted to see. Built a fantasy in my head and convinced myself it was real. Nock had played a role, but I'd written the script. I'd been my own worst enemy. Months passed. Then a year. I was still in Pattaya, still teaching, still living simply. I dated occasionally, casually, never letting anyone get too close. I sent money back to Canada when I could, rebuilt my relationship with my mum over long phone calls where she was careful not to say I told you so. I started to feel like myself again. Not the person I was in Vancouver, and definitely not the person I was with. Nock someone new. Someone a little wiser, a little more careful, a lot more humble. I don't regret coming to Thailand. I regret the choices I made, the red flags I ignored, the way I let desperation cloud my judgment. But I don't regret taking the chance. Because now I know. Now I understand what I was really looking for. And I know I won't find it by running away or clinging to the first person who makes me feel less alone. Real love isn't built on need. It's built on honesty, on seeing someone clearly and choosing them anyway. I didn't have that with Nock. Maybe someday I will with someone else. Or maybe I won't. Either way, I'll survive. I'm still here, still standing. That counts for something.